Is Cloudflare becoming too big to block? Or are we just witnessing the inevitable gold plating of the humble Boolean? That's the question on the minds of the tech community today. Welcome back to AI Talk Radio. I'm your host, Paul, broadcasting from our London studio. We're diving into the latest discussions bubbling up from the Hacker News community. Today's format is a bit different. We're hosting a series of debates on 3 distinct stories that have caught the collective eye of the developer world. Let's get straight to the phones. Our first topic involves Flagship, a new offering from Cloudflare that moves feature flags to the edge. Proponents call it a revolutionary zero-hop abstraction, while critics are calling it Booleans as a service. Joining us first from San Francisco is Marcus.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me. Look, I think people are, they're missing the point here. They see feature flags and they think, like it's just an if statement. But when you're dealing with if you're dealing with massive niche B2B clients, the context gets incredibly messy. You might have inventory from a specific supplier that should only be seen by a specific subtype of user at a specific time. Doing that with a zero network hop abstraction, that's powerful. It's like you write the logic once and it just runs in a tight loop. It's as fast as a constant in your code.
A fair point on performance, Marcus, but we have Elena calling in from Berlin who sees a darker side to this infrastructure expansion. Elena, you're on.
Yes, thank you. Look, Marcus is talking about performance, but have we learned nothing from the history of email? We basically slept through the decade where Google and Microsoft and AWS took over. Now they're literally too big to block. They ignore spam reports because they just don't have to care. If we keep moving every tiny bit of logic, like even our Booleans, to Cloudflare, we're handing them the keys to the entire web. And, have you looked at the SDK? The docs literally warn you that the client-side API token isn't scoped to a single app. That is a security nightmare waiting to happen in public-facing apps.
But, Elena, that's just a configuration detail. You're comparing a feature flagging tool to the entire global email monopoly? If I can't call home from my service, I have bigger problems, sure, but managing a massive JSON file for flags across a dozen microservices it's a nightmare. Over-engineered? Maybe. But for a dashboard and coordination, it's a godsend.
It's over-engineered for 90% of use cases. It's just, it's gold plating. If you can't switch a feature path with an environment variable or a simple database check, your architecture is the problem, not the lack of a flagship edge service. We are just building more cages for ourselves.
A classic tension between convenience and decentralization. Thank you both. Let's move to something a bit more physical. There's a fascinating report on a methyl methacrylate tank that nearly caused a catastrophic event. It sparked a debate about passive versus active safety in chemical engineering. Grant is calling in from Houston.
Hey, Paul. Listen, I read that post-mortem, and I gotta say, I spent the whole time wondering why they didn't just, pierce the thing, like with an armor-piercing rifle. I'm serious. If you got a tank that's about to go blave, that's a boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion for the folks listening, why wait for a random crack to appear? We just saw that paper mill explosion in Washington yesterday. People died. If you've got thermal runaway, you need to bleed that pressure, and you need to do it on your terms, not the chemicals' terms.
The rifle approach certainly sounds dramatic. Let's hear from Sarah in Boston, who has a different perspective on how these systems should fail.
Hi, Paul. I think Grant's suggestion is, it's pretty risky. When you're dealing with something like methyl methacrylate, it's not just pressure, it's polymerization. If you pierce it, you might just be, creating a new uncontrolled variable. The fascinating thing in the Hacker News thread was that miraculous grace of a crack that allowed the pressure to bleed naturally. It's about passive protection. After something like an earthquake, or even the Tohoku disaster in Japan, you don't want to have to actively intervene. You want the system to fail safe.
But Sarah, passive just means I hope it doesn't blow up before it cracks. That's not a plan. We're talking about a firefighter's worst nightmare. I've seen the reports on the Kingman Levy. If that engine company hadn't had that crack bleed to pressure, it would have been a crater. Why leave it to, the luck?
It's not just luck, though. It's engineering for failure modes. And besides, did you see the comment from the guy asking what happens when they peel the metal away? When this is over, they might literally have a gigantic, solid, clear block of acrylic, a monument to a near miss. To me, the chemistry is, it's beautiful and terrifying. And we should focus on making the tanks themselves smarter, not, shooting them.
Well, let's hope we don't have to resort to ballistics in chemical plants anytime soon. Thank you both. Finally, let's turn to a more creative endeavour. A developer recently shared their Git-tracked book production pipeline, designed to bypass Adobe and Microsoft. It sparked a heated discussion about whether we're overcomplicating the simple act of writing. Liam is on the line from Melbourne.
G'day, Paul. Look, this project is brilliant. Anyone who's ever tried to, write a book in Word and then export it to PDF for a printer and then make it an EPUB for Kindle, it's a nightmare. You make one typo fix and you have to, manually sync 3 different files. Using Git and Markdown, it's the only sane way. I've been using things like Typest and Pandoc for a non-profit, and it's seamless. It handles the versioning, the CI/CD. It's pure.
Freedom from the word processor. Siobhan from Dublin, however, thinks the old guard might still have some life in them. Siobhan?
Yeah, hi, Paul. I love Git as much as the next nerd, but I think people they're being a bit hard on the pros. Like, in the Hacker News thread, some folks pointed out that the author didn't seem to know about the place command in InDesign. You could literally, you can link an external Word doc as a master and it auto-updates. You don't need this massive bespoke pipeline with Python and GhostScript just to, avoid Microsoft. It feels like we're building a rocket ship to go to the grocery store.
But Siobhan, InDesign it's proprietary, it's expensive, and it doesn't do diffs. If I want to see exactly what changed in my prose between Tuesday and Thursday, I can't do that easily in a docx or an InDesign file. But it shows me exactly what's what. Even if I have to argue about hard versus soft line wraps in my text editor, it's worth it for the control.
The wrap debate is exactly my point. If you're spending hours configuring your Vim diff engine just to see your paragraphs clearly, are you even writing anymore, or are you're just sysadminning your novel? I mean, look at the Sourdough Framework book. It's a great example of a tech-heavy pipeline, but for most people, it's a huge barrier to entry. I think we're losing the plot, literally.
A huge barrier to entry, or the ultimate writer's toolkit. We'll have to leave the debate there. It's been a fascinating look at the edge of the web, the volatility of chemicals, and the future of the written word. We've seen a common thread today: the tension between sophisticated, automated abstractions and the simplicity, or perhaps the limitations, of the systems that came before. My thanks to Marcus, Elena, Grant, Sarah, Liam and Siobhan for their insights, and a special thank you to the Hacker News community for providing the intellectual spark for today's show. That's all for this edition of AI Talk Radio. I'm Paul, and I wish you all a very thoughtful day.